Social reform in the Progressive Era was vital to the formation of society we have today, and without these reforms, many Americans would still be victimized and exploited. To understand social reform in the Progressive Era, we must first understand the reformers themselves. Many were middle class Americans who hated the onset of massive corporations, city bosses, and urban immigrant populations. Although similar in their desire to create change, reformers had a wide range of interests, embracing anti-monopoly, city beautification, civil service, government, and social reforms. After the influx of immigrants in the early 1900s, followed by the Depression, Americans would develop a major reform movement to address social problems. They began to question provisions of the Constitution, the power of the Supreme Court, and ultimately whether America was even a society in which other countries should model themselves. Progressive reformers are remembered for enacting regulations mainly at the state and local government level rather than national. They set out to establish government rules and what corporations, social agencies, public officials, and others can and cannot do, and the penalties associated with not abiding by these regulations. Jane Addams was a crucial player in the social reform of the Progressive Era. Otherwise known as the American Reform Goddess, she carefully documented living conditions and ethnicities of local residents seeking corrective legislations. She formed the Hull House and hundreds of settlement houses around the country. Theodore Roosevelt was another important player in the social reforms of the Progressive Era. Supported by Jane Addams, he established a new political party, the Progressive Party, which would support the social insurances, workmen's compensation, and minimum wage, women's suffrage, and child labor laws. With other reformers, Roosevelt and Adams were able to create policies and programs for a variety of minorities consistently ill-treated by societies. These programs included workmen's compensations, mothers' pensions, juvenile courts, the Children's Bureau, and protections for female workers in various states. Workmen's compensations law adopted by all states in 1920 established a state fund that received its revenues from a payroll tax levied on employers. Workers injured on the job were entitled to obtain an award based on this specific type of injury. Mother's pension movement focused on the needs of women who had been widowed and would have to work long hours so that they could not properly care for their children, arguing that they needed governmental assistance. In addition, women were also able to obtain a minimum wage legislation. Other major progressive reforms were the creation of the juvenile courts. Children weren't tried in adult court, detained in jail for extensive period of times, or remanded to adult prisons. The reformers also established the National Committee on Child Labor Laws, which focused on the passage of national child labor laws. In addition, there were multiple reforms for people with mental illness in the Progressive Era. Reformers established aftercare services for people who had been institutionalized, non-governmental societies for mental hygiene, and the National Committee for Mental Hygiene. Although culture and political realities limited reforms on the Progressive Era, we can learn a lot about reform strategies in our structure of American welfare state. We can use these successful strategies in our society today.